Thanks a lot for staying with us. This is Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by a constitutional lawyer and former president of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Malaki Ugwummadu, for discussion on 5.4 million registered voters for Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi governorship elections. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Malaki. And it's so good to see you again.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Right. So let's start with preparations for these elections. Preparations are in top gear for this off-cycle elections in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi State. How will you describe the build-up?
Well, I think it is interesting to observe that, well, let me rephrase by saying that it is intriguing to observe that the election monitoring body, INEC, has shown, almost demonstrated that they are ready. However, as Nigerians and close watchers of events, we have so soon learned that it is not so much about the avowals or the statements of preparedness as stated by INEC. It is so much about what happens on the D-Day. How much were they able to walk their talk and crystallize the activities of the body in a way that restored the confidence of the Nigerian people. Mind you, election is not entirely what democracy means. It's a critical ingredient or aspect of the democratization process. But it is so important that it is through that means that you locate the will of the people. You are able to assert categorically or otherwise that what has come out of the exercise vests legitimacy as against validity to whoever wins the election. So it's very crucial, but it's gratifying to see that quite a lot is happening, including the mock preparations, accreditations, revision and updating of the register and so on and so forth. So we are optimistic. We keep hoping for the best, knowing that we can't afford to really roll back from where we are.
All right, so because this election will be the first to be conducted after the elections, the disputed 2023 general election. So, I mean, you have talked about how INEC looks prepared, but is there any sign, yes, that there will be a paradigm shift next month?
Well, again, where we are is still the statements of assurances,
okay,
the intentions and the preparedness, as it were, again, by the same chairman of INEC. This time around, I've heard him, as you clearly showed a few clips, indicating that a few lessons, are picked from the events of the general election. In particular, the statement by the INEC chairman that there will be electronic, upload of the results to their IREF caught my attention, essentially because that became a very source of concern to the Nigerian people, why that was not possible in the case of the presidential election, and how much disaffection, or if you like, resentment that the Nigerian people suffered as a result of that. So I think the point should be clear that as far as the architecture of election exercise is concerned in Nigeria, okay, INEC, which is the independent National Electoral Commission, remains the election management body. It is saddled under the Constitution, Section 153, and then there are functions under the second schedule of the Constitution, as well as the Electoral Act 2022. This time around, Section 9, all through to 10, to deal with the preparations of elections in Nigeria. So, and I'm aware that enough appropriation allocation of funds also have gone to the activities of INEC, so much so that we're not expecting the usual excuses that flies in the face of logic, in the face of this huge budgetary allocation, and in the face of the avowals. When I say avowals, I mean statements of assurances that they were going to deliver. I think they should see it for what it is. For long, the Nigerian people have vested their hopes and confidence in the capacity of INEC to deliver. For as long as they flutter and are unable to discharge the functions of their office maximally, for that long, they whittle the confidence of the Nigerian people in the process of these elections. And the implications are far-reaching. It may be intangible, but when you diminish the hope and confidence of the Nigerian people in the process of selecting leadership or electing leadership, you don't recover in one election cycle. It takes a while. And in our own case, that is the beginning and the groundswell, the preparation for litigations. So much so that people have quarreled with what is now generally known as the over-judicialization of our election processes.
So now that you've gone there, let's now take these issues one after the other. Yeah. 5.4 million voters were registered for the polls in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi State. From your analysis and observation, is this an indication that the people find the elections pivotal?
Well, it's not so much of that. It doesn't indicate that as such. In my view, that number is not very impressive. I recognize the electoral weight of the states in question. When I say weight, I'm talking of the quantity of voters historically in these states. They are not so much of swing states, so to speak. But the point is that everything indicates that so much is happening in the level or degree of confidence that the Nigerian people, albeit citizens of these three states, now vest in the process. Because if you're going to talk of three states mustering just about this number, and you know, registered is different from accredited. We are talking about registered voters. Mm-hmm. On the day of the election, from experience, you would find that you might not be achieving more than half the number that has just been quoted. For me, that doesn't capture the totality. You know, it's all about number, how many people have believed in this process, gone beyond the belief, participated, owned the process in a way that, you know, legitimizes the process. I think that's where the concern is.
But would you say there's a slight improvement?
Well,
from what it used to be.
I like your word, and I guess you are using it cautiously. Slight improvement, but given where we are and the importance of this election, I personally would have thought that the number should be much more than what we have.
So we'll come back to that.
Considering that we're talking about registered voters.
We'll come back to that issue. We'll come back to that issue because it's very crucial. So out of the 5.4 million registered voters, we have 1.05 million for Bayelsa State. We have 2.4 million for Imo State and 1.9 for Kogi State. So in which of these states are we likely to have the most keenly contested?
Well, let's step back a bit and look, they are all going to be contentious. And in my view, Imo will be most contentious.
How do you think so?
Given the background and the preceding activities that led to the emergence of the sitting governor, and how that has triggered, if you like, the curiosity of the people of Imo State. Don't forget, many have not forgotten the Supreme Court judgment that led to the emergence of Hope Uzodinma, and how that has also emphasized the intensity, in my view, of what is to come. And I guess that narrative has been, properly inched in the minds of the people to say, look, this time around, we want to settle the battle in the ballot box or through the ballot box, other than what it was, in the previous time. Now, if you put that aside, you visit Bayelsa and see that the gladiators they are not newcomers.
Absolutely.
I make the statement not unmindful of the judicial decision in the case of Silva, former Governor Silva. But as I know, the matter is on appeal. How much time he has to navigate all of those legal contestation before the election is what is not very clear for me. In any case, whatever the situation is, all of those factors will play into the outcome of the election. So, by and large, it promises to be very engaging. As always, election generally is a context that must be won and lost. The variables that are at play, depends on the political setting, the participants or the contestants, as well as the voters who decide the day.
So how do you think Kogi State is going to play out?
Kogi also promises to be an interesting one. I'm only very concerned about the degree of insecurity that has played out so far. It's not as bad as we have had it in the past, when a vibrant, God bless her soul, woman leader of a political party, I think it's APC, was set ablaze in her own house. We all witnessed to the experiences of so many contestants, particularly those on the opposition. Nasata Apoti, for instance, is one persistent frontline politician there who has got her fingers burnt, not because but because she's found herself on the other side of the divide. But why I say it's going to be interesting is that you have the incumbent factor, where Governor Yahaya has openly declared his support for, this time around, people say his cousin. I don't think there's anything wrong in that. But has very stiff opposition from, frontline politicians within the state, including Senator Dino Melaye. And it appears that each one of them is poised to breast the tape, as it were. But what is not very clear is how that sits with the people themselves. Are they sufficiently enlightened with what the issues are, or has the regular rhetorics and campaign atmosphere, has it swallowed the real core issues of capacity, competence, character, and the political will to push Kogi State beyond where they now find themselves? Because let's face it, I was listening to, I think it was the Commissioner of Information, one gentleman, Mr. Fanwu, who confirmed in your sister television that civil servants have been receiving a fraction of their salaries for months now. And the way he characterized that situation suggested to me that he was even wondering why they, as a government, didn't desire some accolades, considering that the previous government were unable to do even what they are doing, notwithstanding that they were rationing these payments. And I felt that was then a lot of problems in that state. I talk of a state where the generality of the workforce, for instance, need to have a rethink. Where each one of these states that is unable to meet those basic functions of the office of governance should be show the way out.
All right,
in my view.
We'll see how that plays out. But let's talk about the voter register.
Yes.
And how critical that is for the conduct of election and litigation. So how will you, how do you think this will help political parties and candidates to prepare for the task ahead?
Let us say that it is a threshold matter. If you put it that way, you will underscore the essence of the voter register. Section 9 and 10 of the Extant Electoral Act 2022 clearly makes it mandatory that the election monitoring body shall continue, with the registration of Nigerians for every elections, be it presidential, senatorial, local government, House of Assembly, and what have you. And that the exercise shall be continuous. That is the language of the Electoral Act. And don't forget, the Constitution vests on them the right and power to conduct, to manage, and conduct and supervise elections. So the Electoral Act now says that aspect of the entire responsibility of midwifing election, which is voter registration, shall be continuous. But in subsection 6 of that section 9, it says that exercise shall not exceed 90 days before the election in question. If you say 90 days, you are referencing about 3 months before the election. But in subsection 10, it says continue now, I think that the essence of this section is to underscore the need to have eligible voters in every state, every ward, every constituency, duly registered. Because, as it were, after your right to life, the next important right is your right to be involved in the governance that affects you. And so, the only way by which you can participate is to have your voters' cards. That is in the context of the Nigerian political situation. In the same way, you cannot contest an election if you don't belong to a political party. A political party is not a political association already recognized by law and has the legitimacy and the right to participate in an election. So no one can underestimate the crucial essence of that exercise. But I think it is even more important to call and draw the attention of INEC to deal with that aspect of their responsibility in a way that promotes transparency, credibility, and restores the confidence of the Nigeria so that we don't have the situation where I think in previous years we had a Mike Tyson in the... So they have the right to review, that is revision. They have the right to update. I'm using the exact words of the Electoral Act. And they have the right to continue to register in that document known as a voters register.
All right. So let's extensively talk about voter apathy. And just like you rightly said, this remains a critical issue in our election. And let's take Imo State, for example. In 2011, 1.69 million registered voters, but 750,000 came out to vote, and that's about 45%. And in 2015, 1.75 million registered voters, but only 46% voter turnout. In 2019 also, 2.22 million registered to vote, but we saw a significant reduction in voter turnout, 37%. This is 2023. According to INEC, 2.419 million registered voters. I mean, do you expect any difference?
So if we're going to go by the statistics you have just beautifully reeled out, you could see that we never made up to 50%.
Absolutely.
And you see, I keep emphasizing on legitimacy as opposed to the validity. Now, we could all talk about, oh, he was elected, he's the president. I mean, we all reference the governor, His Excellency. Now, what really, in technical terms, vests the legitimacy in those offices, no less in the occupants of those offices, is the participatory nature of the process. Okay. And when we talk about participation, the first point is how many, in the percentage of registered voters, how many participated in the process as to guarantee, as it were, the legitimacy that he needs to govern. He could govern because if you made 37, 32% in an exam, you've done poorly, awfully poor. But where you are able to attract as much. Now, let me not heap the blame on INEC, because it's not INEC headache per se. I recognize that there is an aspect of their responsibility that targets sensitization, voter education. But if you think hard about it, it is actually the responsibility of political parties to mobilize citizens of the country to participate. And how do they do this? It is through their activities. Most often than not, it is the activities of the political parties, including giving clear-cut indication of their identity, which is what we'll talk about. Ideology is not so much about we're not big on that now. But it is the activities of these political parties, their capacity to debate policy issues, and then analyze it in such a way that even if they're in the opposition parties, they're able to point in the direction of what is possible and what can be an alternative, feasible alternative to what is going on. It is those policy directions that attract people, those ideological bents that attract people to them. And people are able to see clearly, know that with respect to the economy, this is how they see it. This is the direction they want to take, in contradistinction to what the sitting government is doing. So at the end of the day, it is the failure of, or the breakdown of political parties to just all-purpose vehicle. I mean, what do they call them? They are now just a means of actualizing or capturing power, and not essentially the real activities of political that cause this apathy. But worst of it all is that we've seen political manipulations, electoral fraud, indiscretion, malfeasance at the highest level in this country. What has not happened is a corresponding redress of those malfeasances. I think in section 150, it used to be 150 in the old Act, 2010, I think 145 now of the 2022 Act. INEC is empowered to deal frontally with electoral offenses. And I have said it on many occasions, that even the Nigerian Bar Association had always shown the desire to partner with INEC to provide pro bono assistance to INEC if part of their problem is that of manpower to deal with that aspect of. I remember years ago, I received a letter from the Nigerian Bar Association, to assist, in that capacity. But the story has remained the same, even afterwards, that not much determination. There's a lot of lip service on that score, not much determination and resolve have we seen in dealing with electoral? And for as long as it doesn't happen, you're throwing up the culture of impunity, because people ride roughshod and know that nothing will happen, and thereby discourage every other person. They go to their rooms, they play football, and the voters' apathy continue as you now complain.
All right, Mr. Malaki, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will continue this conversation.